Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening to Gun Owners Radio. And a very happy New Year. I hope your New Year's Eve was safe and fun, and you spent it with friends, family, or if they weren't available, people that you love. Sign up for our email. Tell your friends. Share us. Go to gunownersradio.com. and see how you can help share the show so that other people can be a part of the Gun Owners Radio movement, and we can make activism easy for them. Hi, Alicia.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Fantastic. And for those that don't know, Discount Gun Mart has provided a home to Gun Owners Radio, and come on in, give them a stop by and say hi and take a look at what they have. You can see what they have online as well as at discountgunmart.com.
There you go. They've been wonderful to us. So yeah, check them out. Come and shoot, buy some product, and just thank them for giving us this really cool place with the nice new background. How do you like our new background?
It's very blue.
It is, right? I like it.
I like blue.
Brings out my eyes. Okay, well, why don't we do this week's Gun Truth of the Week? Nice. This week's Gun Truth of the Week was shown to me by a friend. Let me just get into it, and you'll see how it all transpires here. In May of 2021, a report was published in the National Bureau of Economic Research. The report is titled, "Have U.S. Gun Buyback Programs Misfired?" And it was written by Toshio Ferrazeres. So sorry if I messed up that last name. Joseph Sabia and Mark Anderson. We found this report in a recent article by the Penn Patriot, John Gabagool Petrolino. So what did they find? Well, quote, in the 2 months following a gun buyback program, we detect a small increase in gun crimes with no corresponding change in non-gun crimes, end quote, John Petrolino writes. He then goes on to say the increase in crime is noted to be 4.8 to 7%. 4.8% to 7% increase. The conjecture is that potential criminal offenders might be acting in response to perceptions about the likelihood of self-defense among law-abiding gun owners. You can find John's article in Bearing Arms. We're actually going to be talking to John soon. He's going to come on this show and talk all about this. But basically, the fact is, after a gun buyback program, when they say, hey, we're going to buy back these guns and we're going to help make the streets safe and, blah-blah-blah, all that other malarkey, it turns out that there is an immediate increase in crime, and that the thought is that criminals say, hey, if everybody turned in their guns in this gun buyback program, and got the $100, gift certificate for their $1,000 gun or whatever, then it looks like the streets are safer for criminals to do criminal activities. That's the theory. The fact is that crime increases. The theory is it's because criminals know that people are now disarmed, which I think is interesting. What do you think about that? What do you think about gun buybacks in general, Alicia?
I think they're horrible.
Really? What do you think? Why do you think they're horrible?
So here's the thing. So gun buybacks. So there's a couple of different angles to consider. One is, here's what I've seen. I've had a number of people that have come to me asking for clarification. Is it really unknown who I am? Do they really have to, do I have to know? Because a lot of people see it as an opportunity to get rid of guns that they shouldn't have. Yeah. So for that, I guess if it's something that you legally cannot sell or kind of get rid of another way, and you're afraid that there could be some legal repercussions to you, okay, I can see a buyback program being an unknowing. No one has know who you are. I can see some value in that.
Well, that's the thing is if you are
a good law-abiding person.
Well, if you have a gun that you don't know the value of, and you absolutely want to get rid of it.
And,
you know what I mean?
You don't care.
And you don't care, and you're not. If you aren't, I hate to say it, if you're not smart enough to be able to understand that has value, and you could actually go to a gun shop and sell it.
Right.
I don't think I want you to have a gun. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's best.
There's some value in that.
But what I really dislike is the PR that comes with gun buyback programs. First off, they're not buying it back.
Right.
Because they didn't know it in the first place. Right. But it gives this message that, it's like this assumptive message that, hey, guns are dangerous, and if you have guns, then that makes for a dangerous environment, which the opposite's true. That's not true in any way.
Right.
But I don't get too excited when there are gun buyback programs.
No.
I do want to make one major change. If I could wave a magic wand, I wish that the law enforcement agencies that did these gun buyback programs would partner with gun shops.
Yeah.
And say, hey, bring your gun shop, bring your FFL dealer guy,
Right.
and that they should be the ones buying the guns rather than buying them and destroying them. Does that make sense?
It does, but the like, for example, just by way of just kind of explaining the circumstance, like I had a woman that came and did a private lesson with me, and through her experience of working with firearm, working lessons and working on it, she realized that she had acquired a firearm from her brother, who she suspected where the gun was likely probably stolen when, knowing her brother kind of a thing. And the serial number had been removed.
No, that's not good.
And she was
That's
like,
a good indicator.
She's like, what do I, yeah, right. What do I do with this? And she was, I kind of gave her some advice, but at the same time, she was leery and she was afraid. She's like, well, what if, if I do X, Y, or Z based on recommendations, could I get in trouble? And she was really, really fearful.
Interesting.
And if there's an FFL involved, there's going to be a trail. And so
True.
For her, this was a way to safely get rid of it.
Well,
but there's so many heirloom, right? Heirloom vintage guns, beautiful guns, because in these buybacks, they're supposed to be destroyed.
It breaks my heart.
It does.
Almost not every, but a lot of times I'll see a story and they'll lay out the 47 guns or whatever that they bought off of people who had no idea what they had, and inevitably, you see a bunch of value. There's antiques, whatever.
History is lost.
Although I'm pretty confident the cops just steal them and they don't destroy the valuable ones.
I honestly hope so.
All right, so gun buyback programs, 4.8% to 7% spike in crime.
Yep.
So if you want a 4.8% to 7% spike in crime in your neighborhood, then talk to your local law enforcement and get them to sponsor a gun buyback program. And that will increase crime in your neighborhood, which sounds like a fantastic idea, and what a great result. Okay, Q&A. You have Q's, we have A's. Okay, first off...
I'm excited for this one, by the way.
What do you mean you're excited?
I saw the first line here.
Yeah?
And I'm glad this is being recorded. Go ahead.
What?
Did you see what's written right there?
That first sentence?
It starts with I.
Yeah, that's what you like? How dare you? I am man enough to admit when I am wrong.
All right.
Sometimes. Okay, so we've spoken a couple of times on SB2. Can you carry where booze is being sold for consumption? And basically, what's the definition? Is it liquor? Is it beer and wine? Can you carry somewhere where there's beer and wine? So here's the thing. Basically, this is what you wanted to hear. Let's get that timpani again ready? I was wrong. I was wrong. Basically, I looked at it and said, well, it specifically says liquor, and beer and wine is not the definition of liquor.
Right.
So you should be able to, if you're following the letter of the law, you should be able to carry in an establishment that only sells beer and wine. Ran it by the attorneys, and they were like, no, that's not. They were like, look, now here's the thing. It's never been tested. Right. So, a lot of people want to know definitively, like, hey, can I do it? What does the law say? Can I not do it?
Well, you got to find a volunteer via test case.
That's the thing, is until it's in front of a judge, you don't actually know in a lot of cases, and this is one of those cases, but all the pro-Second Amendment attorneys, these are experts. These are people that work on Second Amendment cases, that know about guns, that want you to, own guns, that want you to carry guns. This was a panel of attorneys who are on our side, basically said that's not going to stand up in court. That if they're selling any kind of alcohol for consumption on the premises, then SB2 says you can't carry there. Now that's restaurants, bars, that sort of thing. That's not grocery stores though, right? Because you can buy.
It's not Bevmo.
It's not Bevmo.
Right.
You can go into Bevmo and you can buy liquor, beer, wine, but it's not being sold for consumption on the premises. So you can still go to grocery stores and that sort of thing, and booze shops, because they're not selling it for
On-site
consumption
consumption.
on the assumptions or consumption on the property. So we're going to change our carry guide. If you go to sdcgo.org/ccw, you're going to see a carry guide where you can a couple of examples of places you can and can't carry, and we're going to update that and make sure that people know that. But no, I thought I found a loophole, and again, I still say if you're going by the letter of the law, what it actually literally says, but. The attorneys say, nope, don't do it.
It's a valiant effort, though.
Yeah. I mean, now listen, if you have $100,000 that you don't mind parting with and you want to see if you can get away with it, and if you're wrong, you might lose all your gun rights, give it a try. But unfortunately, we're the good guys, which means we have to abide by the law. So, okay, next question via Rumble from what is this, Yo Mikey or Yo Mickey, you think? Yo Mickey 1? Let's go with Yo Mickey 1.
Yeah.
He says, can a non-California resident get a CCW in San Diego yet? He's from New York. Thanks. Short answer is, probably the most accurate answer is in theory. They have the process and the procedure. I don't know. There is a court case. There is a ruling that says that you should be able to, Yo Mickey. But I don't know if anybody's actually done it in San Diego yet.
The closest that I've seen be successful is going to be military, where they don't have official residency,
which is
different.
That's totally separate.
Right.
Yeah, totally separate. This new court case, this new ruling says that you should, and actually has a process and a procedure. So what I'm going to say is that you should try it. You should absolutely try it. In theory, you should be able to do it. Again, I don't know if San Diego specifically has had any experience with it. You might still kind of hit some bumps in the road, but let us know. But if you're from out of state and you want a California CCW and you want to get it through San Diego, in theory, that should happen. That should go on. That should be a thing.
One sticking point I can see is that they require an FSC as part of the application now.
But there's a whole separate process and procedure for. They actually published it.
Okay.
The court actually says, hey, you need to tell people exactly how to do this. And there's a whole process and procedure. One of the exciting things is that it's actually, I think it's arguably easier for somebody outside of the state to get a California CCW than it is for a resident. A resident, we got to jump through more hoops than the process and procedure that was published by maybe we should send that process and procedure out. Maybe we'll send it out via email.
And I'm glad that you're telling me this because I wasn't aware.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So maybe I should have gone into deeper. Next week we'll go into deeper dive on this. All right, let's move on. All right, so Alicia, our next segment, we're going to go to the lawsuit updates. So this segment's our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and the legislators. Remember, I'm not an attorney. Alicia's not an attorney. This is not legal advice. You should always go to a properly licensed California attorney. Our sponsor of this segment, John Dillon, is a lawyer.
And a great one.
And he's been helping people fight GVROs and all kinds of horrible anti-gun laws here in California. So if you know somebody who had their self-defense rights taken away without due process because of a GVRO, have him call John. His website is DillonLawGP.com. His phone number is 760-642-7150. 760-642-7150. So the idea here is I want to tell you quickly, briefly, everything that's gone on either legislatively or via lawsuit over the last week or so that you don't have to sit through 5 or 6 videos that are 10 minutes long to get the general idea. There are a lot of great guys out there that do deep dives on each of these things, and I encourage you to check those out if that's what you like. But I just want to touch on it so you basically know pretty much what you need to know in all those. Okay, first off, it's 2025. It's our first show of the year. And so I want to talk about what are some things that have changed. Now, fortunately, not a lot of changes. In fact, there's some positive news here. And let's start with that. I haven't seen anybody talk about the fact that there are a bunch of new guns on the roster as of January 1st. Have you taken a look at that, Alicia?
This January 1st?
Yeah.
No, apparently I've been under a rock this week.
If you look,
looking now.
Yeah, there's a bunch of 9mm and some 357s and even a 22. Shadow Systems, and Smith & Wesson and Colt all have a couple of really cool guns on there. Shadow Systems, which I'm not really all that familiar with, they have their DR920P, their MR920, and their XR920, all 9mm. They look like they have shorter barrels, so they're probably good for compact. Though the one's 4.5 inches. But Smith & Wesson has their M&P 9 Shield Plus, which has a pink slide. Aw. So that's...
The plus has already been, but the pink slide is different.
It's
so
the
that's a
pink slide,
variation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Their M&P 9 Shield Plus in silver has also been added. The M&P 9 Shield Plus in purple. And then a Colt Python, a 357, has been added. And then what is a Rost Martin? I'm not familiar with them.
I'm not familiar either.
Their RM1C has been added, and that's a 9mm pistol with a 4-inch barrel. And Colt Python, again, I don't know the difference between these two. Oh, one's a 4.25-inch barrel and then the 6-inch barrel, so both have been added. Mm-hmm. And then another from Rost Martin, RM1C. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like a dozen guns have been added since January 1st, so check it out. Go to the California DOJ, check out their certified handguns and their stupid roster, and then go down to your favorite gun shop and buy one of these guns, which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm seeing a bunch of things. This is one thing that hasn't changed, but I keep hearing people talk about it, and I don't know why. So back in the 2023-2024 session, Senate Bill 53 passed, and it's a storage law. So basically, the way it works in California, the way it worked in California, is you had to store your firearm so that prohibited people or people that couldn't handle a firearm wouldn't be able to access it. So if you didn't have any prohibited people in your house and you didn't have any children, you could leave it on your nightstand or wherever. Your house is locked, your house is secure. You were good to go. In fact, let me read from this bill, SB 53, by our good friend Portantino, who's as anti-gun as they come. Existing law makes it a misdemeanor or a felony if a person keeps a firearm within any premises that are under the person's custody or control, and the person knows or reasonably should know that a child is likely to gain access to the firearm without the permission of the child's parent or legal guardian, and the child obtains access to the firearm and causes injury other than great bodily harm, injury, or death, or great bodily injury to the child or any other person, or carries that firearm off the premises as defined to a public place or a school. Existing law exempts a person from the above provisions if the person has no reasonable expectation based on objective facts and circumstances that a child is likely to be present on the premises. This bill would remove these exemptions. Basically what this bill did is, and it was voted into law, and it makes it to where you have to secure your firearm inside your house at all times, unless you're actually touching it. It's a very vague definition. You can't leave it on your nightstand. It has to be under your control. And if you're not touching it, it's not under your control. Now that again hasn't been tested in court, but this is basically identical to some of the local places. Like La Mesa tried to pass this, Solana Beach did pass this, San Diego passed this. And it's no different from them. It hasn't changed in any way. They presented it, and there was no change from presentation till passage. But here's the thing. This doesn't go into effect 2026. I don't know why, but I saw a bunch of videos talking about it. It says it black and white. This bill would, beginning on January 1, 2026, require a person who possesses a firearm in a residence to keep the firearm securely stored when the firearm is not being carried or readily controlled by the person or another lawful authorized user. So what is readily controlled?
Very open to interpretation.
It's very, I would say the most literal, safest interpretation of this law is you got to be touching it.
Yep.
you got to be touching it. If it's on your nightstand and you're brushing your teeth, are you in control of that? I don't want to be that test case.
Now, one thing that's important to note is that there's two different ways to secure your firearm. And I was just reading through SB 52 or 53 just to see if they gave any clarification or instruction either way. You can either prevent function by putting a lock on the gun, or you can prevent access by putting it essentially behind a locked door in a locking device.
Yes.
And it doesn't give any direction. So it still looks as though that would be the same. You either secure it by preventing function with a locking device on the gun, an internal lock mechanism on your firearm if your firearm has one counts, or a lock device that you put on the gun. For example, if you want to fight with a cable lock and run it through your mag well, right, that works. Or a trigger lock if you find one that actually functions and works, that works. Or you put it in a locking device or in a safe, something like that.
Right.
Preventing access.
But reminder, this doesn't go into effect
2026.
for another year.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to make that point. So you have 12 months to fully embrace this. We have 12 months to fight it. But understand the law. It will go into effect next January. No, it is not happening in 2025. Let me repeat, it is not happening in 2025. Okay, the next one is, this is the only real change. It's AB 1596. It requires firearm dealers to provide consumers with a pamphlet covering the reasons for and risks of firearm ownership. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah.
I found this article on Breitbart. It's actually written by A.W.R. Hawkins, who's awesome. Among the warnings, dealers are to make customers aware of the claim that gun ownership increases risk of death to someone in the household by suicide, homicide, or unintentional injury. So basically what they've done with AB 1596 is that they have legally mandated false information. So they are basically using your tax money in a way, although it's probably tax neutral, but they're forcing speech by gun shops that they don't agree with and is not factually accurate. This is their subjective opinion. It's totally wrong. That's the big change. That really is the big change. Now, let's talk about, so we talked about a positive change, that things are being added to the roster. We talked about something that is not happening until 2026. We talked about an actual change that really puts the burden on gun dealers. And now let's talk about something that didn't happen, which is good. AB 1483 passed. And the way things worked is you could purchase one firearm a month. So every 30 days, one firearm. There was an exception for private party transfers. So if you're buying from someone other than a dealer, if you're buying from another private party, you're a private party, you're buying from another private party, then you could, buy and sell as many as you wanted. There was no 30-day prohibition. This bill passed into law actually got rid of that. It was AB 1483, which meant that even private party transfers were limited to one per month. The good news is all of that has been eliminated thanks to our lawsuit, Nguyen versus Bonta, so that you, private party, from a dealer, you can do as many transfers a month as your heart desires. So had we not won that case, had we not picked up that case and fought so hard, thanks to groups like Firearms Policy Coalition, and of course, again, we're plaintiffs on that case. Thanks to that lawsuit, we defeated a bill before it even went into effect. So congratulations and thank you so much. What do you think of that, Alicia?
I think it's fantastic. You guys are fighting the fight that the rest of us don't know how to do, which is important.
Well, you're a member though. You're in it with us.
That's it. But that's the thing is when we're members, we're supporting the organization. The organization then is able to take that support, and then on our behalf is fighting for the things that we need. That's the key.
That's the key.
That's it.
All right, and that's all you need to know this week. That is our legal and legislative segment. Okay, our first guest, we actually have two. We're going to treat you with two guests today, but our first guest is someone I've known for years. My buddy Rob Morris. Rob Morris writes for Slow Facts blog and contributes to the Politics and Guns podcast, as well as AmmoLand Shooting Sports News. Rob Morse is he's a design engineer and analyst by day and a civil rights advocate by night. His quote is, I like this a lot. I respect ideas that have stood the test of time and circumstance. I respect those slow facts. This segment is sponsored by Cargo. Cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Cargostores.com on 423 Broadway, El Cajon, California. You know, we've been talking about Cargo, and you know about there's over 2,000 different kinds of cases that protect your firearms, your photo gear, your drones, and whatever you need to protect. But did you know that Cargo is a Gerber dealer? Gerber, super high quality knives for all different types of activities. And check it out. This is my new favorite Gerber. You see that?
See it.
And I have a particular tool on this. It's got the usual knife and screwdriver and pliers and scissors and all that other cool stuff. But look at how tiny it is. And it's got this. I've never seen this before. This is for opening boxes. And we live in an Amazon world.
Right. No kidding.
So this is something like I could carry a knife around and not use the pliers for a year and a half, you know?
Right.
But this box opener, this little tool that helps you open a box, I'm using this like every day now.
It's got like a little tooth on it that kind of hangs up. That's interesting.
That's right. So it opens it up. Okay, I call it the Unboxinator. It opens up packages like a champ. So support local. Go visit them, pick up a Gerber dime for yourself, and check out the other Gerber knives that they carry. Use GOR for a 10% off of their website, or if you go in and let them know, they'll give you 10% off. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good services. Cases and rugged gear outfitters. Go check them out. Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It's great to talk to you again.
It's great to talk to you. How have you been? Happy New Year.
Yeah. Well, Rich and I tried to set this conversation up. I think we aimed for September, and he said, can you wait? And then I said, can you wait? And here we are in 2025.
Yeah, not a moment too soon.
Evidently.
So I love your term, the slow facts. I know we've talked about it before, but let everybody know what you mean. What are slow facts?
Oh, Mike, you and I have been on the internet, and we've been on social media. Okay, I'm over 6 years old. I can't compete with teenage emotion. Something will happen in the world, and someone will tell you all their feelings about it, and I'm going, I'm still struggling to find out what happened.
Yeah.
The guy who said, let's wait 72 hours, that was me, just to figure out what really happened. Then I can figure out what it means. Now, hey, you and I talked about whether we want to talk about some sort of unattractive things. You know, we just had a mass murder here down in Louisiana where I am now. You had near you an attempted mass murder in Las Vegas. I understand that people have a lot of emotions for that because we don't know what happened. We don't have the facts. All we have to go on is our gut. Because, I mean, let's face it, it's going to take the FBI 2 months to fill out a spreadsheet.
It is, and I really wanted to talk about that with you because, and that's why I wanted to lead off with your term, slow facts, because yes, there were two, January 1st, there were two attempted mass murders, and one of them, the one in Las Vegas, turned into, I don't even know what to call it. It was just this huge conspiracy theory fest. And
yes.
I wanted to really talk about that. What happened was, first of all, let's just kind of talk about what happened. So there was a guy named, what's his name? Matthew Livelsberger, I think is how you pronounce that. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly. Now, this guy was in his 19th year, active duty Army. He was a Green Beret and by all accounts was an outstanding soldier. He also, it sounds like, from close friends of his, including I guess there was somebody he dated who was also a nurse in the Army, and she described him having a traumatic brain injury that sounds like it went undiagnosed, and because he was afraid it would affect his career. And it sounded like it really, truly changed him. And it also sounds like that his current marriage fell apart just days prior to what he did. He rented a Cybertruck by Tesla. He was in Colorado. This is kind of odd. I don't know if you saw this, but if you look at the route he took, I think he made a mistake with his GPS because he actually went to Las Vegas, New Mexico from Colorado. And
Really?
Las Vegas, New Mexico is a tiny little town. It's actually the town where they shot Red Dawn in 1984. That's Las Vegas, New
I
Mexico.
didn't know.
Yeah, and by the way, if you pull up into Las Vegas, New Mexico, it looks exactly like it did in 1984. I mean, it's this little tiny town. They even still have the mural that says Calumet, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, they shot a couple of movies there. No Country for Old Men. They shot Red Dawn there. They shot a number of movies there. And then it looks like he pretty quickly picked up on his mistake and then rerouted and went to the Las Vegas he meant to go to. Now, I don't know if that might have just been related. It's kind of odd that a Green Beret would make that kind of navigation mistake, but whatever. He shows up in Las Vegas. He had purchased 2 handguns in Colorado. He rigged some kind of explosive in his car, in this Cybertruck. He reached out to a number of girlfriends along the way and just kind of shot the stuff about old times, kind of reminiscing. And then it looks like he shot himself with one of the pistols he purchased, ignited this improvised bomb, and a couple people, I think like 7 people were hurt. Nobody was killed other than himself. So that looks like those all appear to be factual. And
Yes.
but then here's what happened, and then let's talk about it, Rob. Sean Ryan, who is he was in the Navy, he was a SEAL. He's a very successful podcaster. I've been following. I've been, not religiously, but I've been following. I remember like one of his first broadcasts where he was still talking about guns. He was talking about an AR, and he's very likable. He had on a guy who was former Army intelligence, which is a broad term. I think people hear, military and intelligence, and they think like, they're James Bond or something. It's a very broad term. I don't really understand exactly what level of intelligence he was involved in the Army. And the whole hour or so was revolved around this other guy who, what's his name? Shoemate or Shoe? I think it's spelled Shoemate, but I think it's actually Shomate. He received an email that apparently it looks like it came from this Green Beret guy who committed this bomb, and it had wild, outlandish claims for why he was doing this.
Right.
He was talking about Chinese submarines that launched gravitational propulsion drones, and here's what I think I want to discuss, Rob, and then tell me everything, all your thoughts on it. But they talked for a good hour on on these outlandish claims,
Right.
and it it didn't even really enter the conversation that this was a guy who had a break from mental health. And that's why he committed this horrible crime. And that those outlandish, bizarre claims, there's no way they were true. I remember at one point in the show, this Shumate guy, I hope that's how you say his last name, I don't mean to mispronounce, he said that he was told that the corpse in the Cybertruck, their DNA didn't match the son of this Matthew Leibelsberger. So the implication was it wasn't actually him.
But it could be that it's not his son.
Well, but here's I think the most important point is there is no way on God's green earth that they collected DNA, processed it, and compared it to this guy's son in 24 hours.
Correct.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And some of these outlandish claims, like it wasn't even a speed bump that they were describing that the Chinese have submarines off the coast with alien technology. That wasn't a red flag at all. He just thought, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of alien technology now. Like, what am I going to do? And Steve,
Well,
he actually, it was named Ryan, Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan actually went into hiding for a few days after this podcast, and that lit the internet on fire. And those were
yes.
not slow facts. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that, Rob?
Well, see, there's something we still have to talk about. Let's our buddy Mike Salvini, Walk the Talk America.
Yeah.
It says people who have mental health issues might be organic. You could chemo brain. The great news is medicine's getting better. We're living longer. More of us get cancer of some sort. If you're treated with chemotherapy, it affects your thinking. Nothing on you. That's just the nature of the beast. Okay, we want to take their guns away. And when they say that they're aliens flying overhead, you go, no, honey, you're trying to make sense of a world that's beyond you right now. It'll get better. Isn't it tragic that we couldn't help this guy? His bell got rung one too many times. Personal and a little bit off topic.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was doing MMA, Muay Thai kickboxing. And I said, honey, you got a brain. Are you sure you're okay? She goes, yeah, I'm done with my PhD, Dad. I can afford to do this a few times. So I go, oh, please, don't scare your parent to death. Similar ideas here, though. We know a lot about mass murderers. We've studied the daylights out of them.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to know, what were they thinking? Why are they doing this? And we have a pretty good idea. Shall I go on? I mean, is that
I'm on the edge of my seat.
And I mean, the other thing is not only like we know that post-traumatic stress is a real thing. We know that he had a traumatic brain injury. You know what I mean? So like it's one step further. I think with a lot of mass murderers, we kind of go, I don't know what happened to this guy. He grew up in a good family or whatever. We know that this guy, it was wide open. They knew going into this podcast that all these reporters, they knew that this guy was having issues, and that still didn't spark any logic.
Right. Well, okay. The media is sensational because they have to sell advertising. Let's back up and see if we can learn a little bit from the facts. Most mass murderers are not worried about dying. Look, and you know this because the guys who commit suicide the most are older men like myself who get divorced. All of a sudden, their life doesn't matter. Most of them just about. Hopefully they walk away. We see a big jump in suicide risk for them. But when we see mass murderers, they're trying to become significant again.
Yeah.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. And gun laws don't stop them. What they are afraid of, what will stop them, and this sounds bizarre, is a fear of failure. For a lot of guys who have been social outcasts or their thinking is disturbed, they enjoy the planning. The planning. Oh, see what I'm going to do. That feeling of power and significance keeps them in the planning stage for years. Sometimes it's long enough that we can catch them and stop them, get them some help. Now, that uncertainty changes everything about them. They want to be shot by the little old lady who was sitting in the cafe as they try to do some mass murder. And that explains why they almost universally, like 8+% of the time, go to gun-free zones.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds bizarre, but there's a dark web where these guys talk to each other, and they the bad news is they goad each other on. The good news is they say that doesn't work. And our call, I'm going to call him John. Hey, Mike, to call John Lott a colleague. We're both been at this long enough. We need to do that, don't we?
Go for it. I won't argue.
He pointed out, and he looked over the last 26 years.
Yeah.
John used to be an economist, so he loves data. 83% of the attacks happened where guns were banned.
Right.
Mass murderers aren't stupid.
Yeah.
They want to be involved in a one-way gunfight.
Yeah, there. I can't
don't-
think of a single mass murder that happened in a police station.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I can think of a lot of them that happened in, movie theaters where they said no guns, or schools
Right.
where you're not allowed to have guns to protect children. I can think of a lot of them. According to John Lott, well over 80% of them have happened in a gun-free zone, either a legally enforced gun-free zone or just a policy-enforced gun-free zone. But there were even some instances where people drove past, targets because they weren't gun-free and went to a gun-free zone because they knew they weren't going to see any resistance at all. I mean, it's not a coincidence, and it's not even a stretch. It is very clear that mass murderers pick gun-free zones to commit crimes.
Let me add to that just a little bit. Just as I left California, where you and I, shook hands for the last time, I started helping people promote school volunteers that would defend their school, because there's a matter of time. If the solution isn't in the building, you got to wait 20 minutes for the cops, and that's just heart-wrenching. In lots of the U.S., the sheriffs were the issuing authority, and after a mass murder, all the school board and all the principals call the sheriff, and they say, "I want a deputy on every hall." And the sheriff goes, "So do I.
Right.
I don't have the guys." And then they point out that a bunch of your school staff have carry permits. They carry everywhere but at school because you didn't give them permission. California used to be able to do that. They changed the laws. Now it's really difficult. You don't see it as much in California. In the rest of the US, we have over 3 million days where an armed school staff member was at school. We've never had an attack on those schools that had a public policy of armed staff, because
Right.
the crazy guys go, not.
Well, no, there has to be some kind of change, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but they're taking people's ability to defend themselves away, especially in a designated area, in mass, has not proven to be a safety policy. It hasn't, proven to be a crime prevention policy. Somebody in the chat brought up that, hey, he wasn't just talking about Chinese submarines and anti-gravitational propulsion or whatever. He was also talking about war crimes. And, I don't know. I don't know if those war crimes actually happened. But I think that that's actually another indicator that he was having a break from reality, that he was having he distanced himself from mental health, unfortunately. And I've heard reports, unconfirmed, so I certainly don't want to be part of the problem, that he had recently started taking medication, like some kind of antipsychotic, medication.
Oh.
And the implication being that possibly that made things worse rather than better. Don't know. But
Wow.
but what I'm saying, I guess, the idea that he knows about war crimes, which may be completely and totally valid. Maybe there were some war crimes and there was a cover-up. That may completely be factual. But the idea that to handle that situation, you rent a Cybertruck, drive to Las Vegas, and blow yourself up in front of Trump's hotel, that's not how mentally healthy people would have handled that situation. I mean, especially in this day and age, there's so many protections for whistleblowers. Does that mean it's a perfect system?
Right.
No. Does that mean that But I think it's pretty clear that the guy, again, was having a mental health episode, and to not have that figure into the calculus, to go on over 2 million people saw Sean Ryan's podcast, and then within hours there were podcasts about the podcast, and
Yes.
And what concerns me is that the simplest, most rational explanation was barely even covered. that people were just like, well, yeah, of course the Chinese have submarines with anti-gravitational,
let's
drones. I mean, that's
let,
obvious,
let's back up. And Dave Grossman did a great job at expanding this and making it understandable to guys that haven't been there.
Mm-hmm.
I've had guys shooting at me in training. They weren't real bullets. They hurt. This guy did it for real.
Yeah.
That is a horrible environment if you want to remember anything. Your brain does crazy things under that amount of stress. That's not a criticism of him. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
What we're forgetting is something that we learned right at the end of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep these guys together, talking to each other, and rotate them in and out as a group, because they have some really distorted memories and they heal each other. The great news is not the traumatic brain injury, but the distortion of memory. Hey man, I don't know if I can trust you because you did this. And you go, I never did that. Well, I thought I saw you. No, that wasn't, I don't know what you saw. It wasn't that. Because we're under such stress, we take fragments of perception and we stitch a story together around them that's not necessarily the truth. Now, we have an excuse for that when they're in combat. We don't have an excuse for that when it happens on the internet.
Interesting. What do you mean? I get you. Okay, we don't have an excuse for when it happens on the internet. Yeah.
Right. Here we are doing it again with a podcast of a podcast of a podcast.
Yeah. Well, we even had a doctor on a couple of weeks ago, and he brought up an interesting an interesting point that I've been thinking about ever since. He wants to take the D off of PTSD. He said it's not a disorder. If you put these warriors, these brave men and women, in a stressful situation like combat, especially for an extended period of time, then and they have these this post traumatic stress, this reaction to it, that is not a disorder. It's completely normal. And that for a lot of reasons he wanted to stop using the D in PTSD. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's totally rational. This guy was a Green Beret for 19 years. We were at war for like 20 years. He was doing things that is horrible that we have to ask anybody to do, in the name of combat, and he apparently again had a legit traumatic brain injury, of course, but it's just too bad we couldn't. There's so many things. It's too bad that we couldn't get to this guy, that nobody could get to this guy and help him and get him the help he needs. And I got to tell you, that's tough. Mental health is sometimes so difficult to recognize. They're acting normal one minute, they're not normal the next minute. It's really, really bizarre. I've been in conversations with people who were having, mental health issues, and 10, 15 minutes they're completely and totally normal and rational, and then they go off the reservation. Like they say something that's just so completely out of, like, wait a minute, what? And it's such a jarring thing. So I think that's definitely that's an area for improvement, is mental health, and specifically mental health for, people that have been in combat or any kind of military situation. But then the other area for improvement is, being able to rationally sort through this stuff, as it comes on the internet, being able to think about the things that you're hearing and going, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. That doesn't make any sense. We can't promote that.
Let me keep that problem on its side a little bit.
Sure.
Because I was studying the event in New Orleans, and it was in the French Quarter. The police chief, who I think is a DEI hire, said the entire French Quarter should be a gun-free zone. And I went, do you know how violent the French Quarter is? Because criminals go there to rob the drunks, and that's why you're. So they're part of the Second Amendment community. We're not quite up to speed on alcohol yet, and let me explain that. That's when we look at how states handle the issue of alcohol. It varies enormously. And I'm going to give you the two extremes. One, and you mentioned on your show, no guns where alcohol served.
Right.
The other extreme, and there are states that do this, you may drink and carry, but it's against the law to use your firearm, just like it's against the law to use your car. You can have car keys, you can't drive. You can have your gun, you best not use it because you're intoxicated. Now, there's the legal theory of competing harms. If I were home and intoxicated and somebody broke in, what would I do? I'd probably try and do, and your lawyer would tell you, you're going to do the safest thing. If you can run away, do. If you have to defend yourself, yes. By the way, you're going to make a blood test and they're going to find out that you've been drinking. And in between, we have different levels of that. You can carry if you don't drink. To me, that's the designated driver law. And then you can drink, but you cannot be intoxicated. So they're treating the car like the gun.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Do you think that it sounds reasonable on the surface? What are your thoughts on it?
See, and then the issue of competing harms. In my town where I live, we got a bunch of cowboys. There are a bunch of cowboy bars. The cops come there every closing time because they're going to be fights. It's just, I don't get Mike, and I'm too old to take any hits. So I don't go to those bars.
Oh, did we lose Rob?
I think internet's down.
The driver is going to take everybody home in is far more power than a firearm. It kills many more people. Here, let's also use a gun so that we can use less force than an automobile.
Interesting. Well, and the broader point is, this demonization of firearms. I should be able to go into a bar with a concealed weapon.
That's
I don't
so
drink.
grown up. I'm not sure I'm used to it yet.
But I don't drink. So, like, why am I more dangerous in a bar, than I am standing outside of the bar? But in both situations, I'm completely and totally sober. So, thank you, Rob Morris. Rob Morris is an awesome guy. Check him out on AmmoLand. Check him out on Slow Facts. I've known Rob for forever. He used to live out here in San Diego. We used to do Second Amendment activism together, and he's in Louisiana now, and he's still fighting the good fight, and he's such a good dude, and I have so much respect. This segment, we're going to do some deployment, tell you where you need to be, what's coming up, how to be involved in the Second Amendment community here in Southern California. So this is sponsored by Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee. Go to rwbbcoffee.com, rwbbcoffee.com. Use code GOR and you'll get 15% off. So if you're a coffee drinker and you want to support the show, you want to support the Second Amendment, you want to support a local guy who's also a veteran, go to rwbbcoffee.com, rwbbcoffee.com, Red, White, and Badass Brew, and get 15% off. All right, we got a couple of things here. What do you think, Alicia? You want to read these?
Sure.
Go for it.
So as far as we have the Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement, which is going to be an exciting time. That is our Massad Ayub class. Remember, the class is span over 4 days. 2 of them are live fire, 2 of them are classroom only, and you're going to get some amazing, fantastic information from the master himself, Massad Ayub. There are seats still available, so sign up today, and there's some testimonials as well.
You want to read the testimonial?
Let's do it.
You all should definitely join this class. I took this class 11 years ago, and it forms the backbone of how I look at crime, self-defense, and firearms ownership. That was our buddy Dave, who's an excellent instructor and a gentleman and just a great, knowledgeable guy. And that's a great testimonial. So you just go to gunownersradio.com. You click on the link for Mastering Self-Defense. That's, I guess, it's mastering. It should be mastering because he's, Moss,
Massad,
right?
you're right.
Massad, right?
That's it.
He's mastering
All right. Next up, we have Intro to Modern Off-Grid Comms, and that's that class, and it's running on January 25th. Now, if you've ever bought a Baofeng and still don't know what to do with it, it's still sitting in a box in the closet or it's under the bed, and it's one of those things where, someday I'll figure it out and someday I'll use it. If the apocalypse comes, I'm just going to magically know how to use it. No, you won't. Take the class, right? It's a great class that's going to teach you how to use it. You'll learn the skills, practice the skills, and you will also get to take home your own programmed Baofeng. Because when you receive them, if you go on like Amazon or whatever, you buy one new, they don't come pre-programmed for what you need locally. And the ones that are given in this class are going to be all set up for you.
Nice, but it's more than just ham,
Right.
But that's a big part of it,
Right.
And you get a really cool ham device,
Ham, making me hungry.
Yeah.
Right. So you can sign up on our website.
Yep, gunownersradio.com.
And don't forget, last but not least, mark your calendars for Inauguration Day. We had a great time watching the presidential debates together, right? We did the VB debates together.
Yep.
It's a great time. You're going to want to see it. You're going to want to be part of it. You're going to want to watch it anyway. Why not do it with some friends?
There you go. So it's 9 a.m. on January 20th. President Donald J. Trump takes office, and you are invited to watch it live from the comfort of a really nice, high-quality theater. You have to buy tickets in advance, so go to our website. Go to SDCGO.org, actually. Go to SDCGO.org, and right on the main page, there's a banner and a link, so you can purchase and come celebrate with us. It'll be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of elected folks there. There's going to be a lot of folks just like you who love the Second Amendment, and we're going to go celebrate this historic event together. So again, that's January 20th. And of course, that takes the play. That's our event this month for San Diego County gun owners. So if you're, that should be the one you go to, and definitely show up. There's going to be a lot more folks there. It's at the Legacy Center, by the way, in Mission Valley. But again, you have to purchase tickets in advance. So please don't just show up. Purchase tickets first.
I foresee a lunch date happening after this.
Yeah? Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Let's do it.
There you go. So you're definitely going to be there?
I'll be there.
All right, I'm definitely going to be there.
All right.
Now that I know that lunch is involved. No.
Where are we going?
Yeah. So yeah, Trump inauguration viewing party, San Diego County, gun owners, the Republican Party, local Republican Party, the Lincoln Club, which is a political organization here in town, and then Reform California, which is Carl's. That's Carl's gig. That's his deal. So check it out. Tickets are available. Should be like 500 people there.
Yeah.
If it sells out.
That would be amazing.
And it's already like halfway sold out. So if you haven't purchased, definitely purchase. Is our next guest on or
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I do want to talk about. Let's see, which one should we talk about next?
Ooh, there's so many good ones to choose from.
Do you want to talk about pot and guns?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk about pot and guns until our guest joins us. So it's pretty interesting. I found this story on a website called the Marijuana Moment.
What part of
Which,
Google were you on?
I know I'm frequently on marijuanamoment.com. I mean, that's, it's really my homepage. But they did the best job covering this guy named Ben Adlin, who, by the way, if you look at his picture, he doesn't look like a dude that would write for Marijuana Moment.
I'm gonna go follow that link and
Don't you think?
take
I
a
don't
look.
know.
I'll
Maybe
be
he
right back.
does. Maybe he looks a little marijuana-y. Anyway, they did a really good job talking about this story. So a federal judge in Texas rules that ban on gun ownership by marijuana users is unconstitutional as blood.
It's like Andrew's cousin,
Andrew who?
Andrew Hayes.
Yeah, he kind of. Well, so Andrew's a very professional guy. That's what I'm saying. Like this guy
You're right.
doesn't
He looks like a.
he doesn't look like a Marijuana
No,
Moment,
right.
journalist.
You're right. He doesn't.
So a federal judge in El Paso has ruled that U.S. government's ongoing ban on gun ownership by habitual marijuana users is unconstitutional in the case of a defendant who earlier pleaded guilty to the criminal charge. I feel like you should add dude like every couple of,
Mm-hmm.
The court this week, allowed the man, to withdraw. No, I'm not going to do that. So the court this week allowed the man to withdraw the plea and ordered that the indictment against him be dismissed. Now, this is something we've talked about for a while. And I've brought up the fact that, so marijuana use in California is legal according to state law. It's still a controlled substance, although they rescheduled it recently, but it's still a controlled substance federally, which means that there's a conflict between the state of California and federal government. Federal government says if you're using marijuana, you're a prohibited person. In fact, it's really almost to the point, the way the law is written, and I'm exaggerating here, but it's almost to the point where if you have any record of ever using marijuana, especially if you have like a medical marijuana card or something like that, then you're pretty much you're kind of prohibited for life. You know, it's really a very pretty vicious piece of legislation. Firearms Policy Coalition this is one of their cases. A Texas federal judge ruled today that the federal ban on gun plus drug possession is unconstitutional as applied to a defendant who was not shown to be, quote, intoxicated by marijuana at the time of the incident or at the time he was arrested, end quote. So basically, you know, if you drink alcohol, you know, you can still be a gun owner, but if you're drunk and using a firearm, that's a problem, right? So this person was a marijuana user, apparently, but wasn't using marijuana at the time that he used his firearm. So from the decision, the history and tradition before us support at most a ban on carrying firearms while an individual is presently under the influence. Here, while the government goes to great lengths to disclose the defendant, quote, admitted being a daily user of marijuana since age 14. First off, why would you admit that?
Right.
Why would you say that?
Well, from using it since he was 14, it might have damaged part of his brain.
And that defendant, quote, just liked good weed. It's the just liked good weed defense. I mean, look, buddy, what's your problem, man? I just like good weed, man. All right, it does nothing in the way of proving the defendant was intoxicated by marijuana at the time of this incident or at the time he was arrested. In line with the Fifth Circuit's reasoning in Connolly, this court agrees that, quote, based on habitual or occasional drug use, imposes a far greater burden on the defendant's Second Amendment rights than our history and tradition of firearms regulation can support. In conclusion, the defendant is part of, quote, the people, and the people are the ones that have the right to keep and bear arms. The defendant is a part of the people whose conduct is covered and protected by the Second Amendment. Because he is part of the people, the government had the burden to identify historical analogs similar enough to show that individuals like the defendant were disarmed at the time of the founding. So at the time of the founding, let's say 1791, were they finding people who were smoking pot and taking their guns away? Were they finding people that were intoxicated anyway and were taking their guns away? No, there's absolutely no evidence of that at all, which means that it is unconstitutional according to, the Bruin decision. Now, the cool thing is, I got to tell you, man, FPC doesn't mess around, and I love them for that. This problem should have been solved, and it's not completely solved yet, but this is a step in the right direction. This problem should have been solved a long time ago. But the problem is Democrats hate guns and Republicans hate pot. So neither one of them wanted to touch this. They're not, remember, they don't get voted into Congress because they're trying to help you. So it just sat there and people were affected by it. Now, California, it was kind of ignored, for a while, but that's not the solution to a bad law. So in response to the challenge to the firearm restrictions constitutionality, the Department of Justice lawyers argued that the defendant wasn't part of the people referred to in the Second Amendment because illegal drug users are addicts. Illegal drug users and addicts are by definition not law-abiding citizens covered by the amendment's text. I don't remember seeing law-abiding citizens in the Second Amendment.
Right.
That's not in the text.
Correct.
But the court disagreed, noting that Daniel's opinion points to 5 mentions of the people in the Bill of Rights and says that in each place it refers to all members of our political community, not a special group of upright citizens. The other thing is he was not law-abiding because he was breaking an unconstitutional law. You know what I mean? Like, that's not...
It's a circular argument.
Yeah, right? I mean, you can't, he's not a good person because he was breaking the law. Oh, by the way, the law is completely unconstitutional, but he was breaking it. You can't judge a person's character by that. You might be able to judge their intelligence or their aversion or, to risk, but that was such a cop-out. That was such a weak argument. The defendant is part of the people whose conduct is covered and protected by the Second Amendment, the ruling concludes. Because he is part of the people, the government had the burden to identify a historical analog similar, et cetera, et cetera. We just read that. One issue that emphasized that the judge emphasized in his ruling is the lack of evidence that the defendant was actually under the influence of marijuana. Might have been a different case if this guy was, clearly, high or,
All they had was
whatever.
his admission that he was a user.
A daily user since 14. I
Right.
wonder why. I'd like to. I didn't see.
Well, you know what commonly happens is people when they feel that they've done nothing wrong, they tend to kind of vomit information.
Yeah. Don't ever do that, guys.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that. You have the right to remain silent.
Exercise it.
Exercise it. The marijuana moment went on to say that that brief was the latest response to a case filed by a Pennsylvania prosecutor suing the federal government over its ban on gun ownership by cannabis users. It's a marijuana moment when they refer to it as cannabis. You know what I mean? It's not pot. It's not wacky tobacco. It's cannabis. It came 2 weeks after lawyers for the official Warren County District Attorney Robert Greene asked the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania to allow the matter to proceed to trial. I hope, and it goes on, it's a good article. They actually did a really good job. I'm making fun because I think the stereotypical pot user is fun to make fun of. I'm not a pot guy. I've never used pot. I grew up in Florida, Hawaii, and California, and those are, that's their major cash crop.
Right.
Is pot in those 3 states. There's a lot of pot users in those 3 states. And I just never was interested. I was never really against it. It just wasn't interesting to me. And frankly, a lot of the pot users I knew were kind of silly. They were kind of ridiculous people.
Yeah.
So you ended up blaming it on the pot. I don't know. I don't think pot's any more dangerous than alcohol. In fact, I would argue that alcohol, is probably a lot more dangerous than pot, although, alcohol is legal and you're not a prohibited person if you drink every now and then or drink every day. So I hope this problem gets solved. And the reason I hope it gets solved is not because I'm some fan of pot, but because the Second Amendment is not a secondary right. It's important. We need to assert ourselves in every way possible. So I hope it goes on to win. All right. Shall we talk about our next guest?
Yes.
What do we got here? Let me take a look here. Okay, sponsored by, who's this sponsored by? Is this sponsored by Seal One?
Seal One, yep.
Okay, sponsored by Seal One, seal1.com. Check out seal1.com. Seal One makes gun ownership easier and smell better. Live fire class with Masada Ayub is sold out, but you could win a Mag 40 class from Seal One, both live fire and classroom. So that's 4 days with Masada Ayub. How do you enter? Well, you go to the website, buy at least $25 or more worth of Seal One, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So buy at least $25 or more of Seal One products and use the code MASSAD, Mossad. Go to seal1.com and get some now. Seal One's at SHOT Show, by the way. If you're going, stop by booth number 71054. And Alicia, you can buy one of these cool. This is a universal pistol cleaning kit?
Yeah, that's it. Comes with your own Seal One product. Get a cleaning rod, the attachments on there, a number of patches. And if you've never used Seal One, what they do in their kits, let me just show this to you because I didn't know until someone told me. So I'm going to share it with you in case you have never used Seal One and you want to be entered to win some of these things. You get 2 different types of patches. You get some that are your traditional white and then others that are kind of this creamy tan color. These are pre-treated with Seal One. So these have the product already on them. You can just simply run them through your barrels, use them to kind of wipe up clean, kind of wipe down all the areas that you would want to apply Seal One anyway, and they're already pre-treated, so you don't have to use the product and then wipe. It's already all in one, which is kind of cool.
Great.
That's it.
Okay. So our guest, this is very interesting. We actually had him on a few weeks ago, and he told a very compelling story about his escape, his literal escape from Vietnam when he was growing up. Quang Nguyen, he is an Arizona state representative. He's a Republican, and he is as pro Second Amendment as ever there was a person. I mean, he really, really, truly walks the talk, and supports our Second Amendment rights. So it's an honor to have you back on. Quan, how are you?
Thank you, sir. I'm fine. Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is, I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion.
I'm here for it.
So we've talked in shows over the last month or so about some of the differences, especially some of the appointments that are coming along with Donald Trump. I don't think I don't even think it's subjective to say that if you're a Second Amendment person, if that's your top one or two or even three hot button political issues, that you voted for Trump. I don't think that Trump was perfect on Second Amendment, but I think he's just about the best president we've ever had on Second Amendment. And he was worlds apart from Kamala Harris. I can't imagine somebody who values and loves and fights for the Second Amendment who decided that, hey, Kamala Harris is probably the candidate for me. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Quang?
Yeah, well, you know what? I actually live that life right now with Katie Hobbs being my governor. And so my executive branch is as anti-gun as anti-gun can be, right?
Yeah.
And
In
so
Arizona.
in Arizona, of
Yeah.
all places in Arizona, we have a Democrat governor who, doesn't like guns very much or doesn't respect the Second Amendment. And so part of my job as the chair of Judiciary Committee is not so much passing laws to protect the Second Amendment, but to actually kill bills that are anti-guns, anti-Second Amendment. And so every one of those bills go across my desk. So I thank the Lord for that.
And there's been an increase in anti-gun bills in Arizona over the last few years.
So,
right?
so there are about 30 waiting for me right now.
30 anti-gun bills?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
All lined up, ready for me to use my shredder. I'm just so honored to have the opportunity to do this. And me coming from a place where we didn't have the Second Amendment, we didn't have guns, we weren't able to protect our country, and we lost our freedom. And that's the reason why I'm here. And the Second Amendment, as you said in the top of your show there, it is the number one issue on my desk. It's the thing that I wake up and I think about. It's the thing that I think about when I'm driving. It's everything about the Second Amendment is everything that I never had before. And it just basically translates to the freedom of living free. I mean, I don't know how to describe it any other way.
You're a true believer, and I absolutely, I'm so thankful that we have people in office that are that dedicated and that passionate about the Second Amendment. You would think that everybody, if you talk to the average Californian, the average San Diegan, they would think that everybody in Arizona thinks like you do, which is continuing to change. I mean, your governor's anti-gun, but then you also have a U.S. senator that's anti-gun. In fact, he heads an anti-gun organization. I mean, things are not. It's not the land of milk and honey when it comes to Second Amendment in Arizona. There's the marauders are at the gate in Arizona, and you guys are having to fend them back. I mean, it's a real true fight there right now.
You said it right. Not everybody is friendly to guns with either political party, actually. Like I said, when we met in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
I think I said something to the fact that you shouldn't allow your state representative or your politician putting the Second Amendment as a bullet item on the platform. Unfortunately, we see a lot of that. As for me, I really don't care about my political life, meaning I only have 2 more terms.
Mm-hmm.
If I get people upset about my stance on the Second Amendment, that'd be fine. As a matter of fact, on Monday, I'm putting out a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services when they put out that child fatality report a few weeks ago, and one of the recommendations was to remove firearms from every family that had a child, a minor.
Wow. Health and Human Services in Arizona is putting out a recommendation that any family that has a child needs to have their gun removed. That's their recommendation.
We're looking anywhere from 500 to 600,000 families.
Wow. So you have a fight on your hand and you're passionate about it. Now I want to talk about something very specific because we've talked about Trump, we've talked about some of his potential cabinet picks, and nothing's official yet because he's not the president yet, but he's definitely floated some names out there. We talked about some of the unknowns and some of the knowns. We've specifically though, you wanted to talk about his what we think is the front runner for his ATF position, the head of the ATF. A lot of people in the gun community are saying, hey, we hope Brandon Herrera gets it. There have been a couple of other names that have been floated out there, but it's looking like people are settling on the name of a guy named Blake Masters. And we talked about Blake on the show a few weeks ago. He ran for office and he was very vocal about Second Amendment when he was running for office, but he doesn't really have any kind of track record of actually doing anything. He's never helped pass a bill or anything like that. So it's all been rhetoric. I appreciate good rhetoric. I like it when people stand up and say, hey, this is a priority. But we don't have a track record for him to I don't have any knowledge of a track record of him on Second Amendment. So you wanted to talk a little bit about Blake. What do you know about Blake? Because he's from Arizona, right?
Actually, I voted for Blake. I supported Blake. I even go as far as saying if he is appointed as director of ATF, I think he would be 1,000 times better than the last guy.
Right.
Right? Do you agree?
Right.
And I think anybody would be able to learn to understand the Second Amendment. I mean, you talk about historical analog and those are the kind of things that came out of Bruin. I mean, we hope that your ATF director would have an understanding of the Supreme Court rulings. So let's just go all the way back to Heller even. I mean, just basic information, and I think that would add a lot to the law enforcement part of the ATF, and not so much. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, what would you like to see your ATF do when she gets the job? And I say, get rid of every single rule in the books. In the book should, as a matter of fact, it's kind of funny. I just saw a statement put out by the ATF on their website regarding the myths of the ATF. And one of the things they said was the ATF makes law, and it says false. Well, no, they don't make laws. They make rules. They bypass Congress to make rules. So, of course, they don't make laws. But what I like to see is the T part being taken more seriously. Get rid of every single rule you can imagine. And if somebody thought that was a good rule that we get rid of, then go through Congress. Have the president sign that into law. And that's what the director should be doing, enforcing federal law.
And do you think Blake is that guy? Or, are you confident that he would be able to step in and not just be effective, but also stand with our principles and what we want to see happen?
Oh, I think eventually, if he has that, anybody can learn, right? Eventually, you'll get to that point. But I kind of like to see somebody like a Brandon Herrera who can just step in and do the job. And I think Masters is better than many, but then also many are better than him.
And I think they have their strengths and weaknesses. I think Brandon Herrera is definitely somebody that understands from a first person perspective what the problems are. What the end user sees the problems are. I think that you're gonna whoever steps in to be the director of the ATF. The ATF is pretty big. The ATF is it's not one guy. And my fear is that whoever steps in is still going to be surrounded by a lot of people who philosophically were more in line with the last guy than they are with us. So whoever steps in is going to have to deal with the politics of it, and they're going to have to be able to be strong enough and talented enough to work with people that disagree with him or disagree with the mission. And it's easy to say like, oh, well, gee, they're government workers. They just do what they're told or whatever. But, the reality is a lot of this stuff happens not at the top, but, at the bottom, and especially middle management. And I think Brandon Herrera is somebody that agrees with us, probably, has a better track record. And I probably have more faith that philosophically he's with us and understands us better than Blake. But I do wonder if Blake, one of his strengths is the ability to deal with the political side and deal with being surrounded by, a bunch of people that don't necessarily agree with Trump or agree with Blake. And I don't know that he may bring that talent with him. That may be one of his strengths.
This is one thing, but working within the political space is another thing. I mean, you and I can talk about politics, but I'm actually the guy that actually stood on the floor in defending the Second Amendment.
Right.
There's a big difference there. And then you have, 31 Republicans, 29 Democrats, and all 29 of them are just barreling down on you. And you have to stand up there on the floor to defend a bill. So in a way, for the most part, I'm not politically correct. What I am is I'm politically stubborn when I know I'm right on the issue, and I will go after it until you throw me off the mic.
And who do you think would be that person? Who would be closer to you, heading up the ATF? Do you think
I think Brandon Herrera would be a whole lot closer to that than I mean, I met Blake. I spoke to Blake. I voted for Blake. I think he's a fine man. He's a fine conservative. But when we're talking about having knowledge of the Second Amendment, that's where you see the difference. And I understand there's the alcohol part, there's the tobacco part, there are regulation. It is a taxing agency, and we need it. That's fine. But I like to see more of the law enforcement side, to where going after the bad guys that are breaking the laws, guys that are trafficking guns, alcohol, straw buyers, stolen firearms. So those are the kind of things that we need them to go after, and not spend the resources to go after FFL dealers or law-abiding citizens.
Do you think it's rational? Do you think it's a rational and real possibility that we could get rid of the ATF? And is that even something that you would support?
I would definitely support getting rid of the ATF, if not just the T part. Yeah, the F part. I'm sorry, just the F part.
Just the F part. So let them regulate booze and tobacco, but stay out of guns.
Leave the rest of it alone. And I think every time somebody gets into that position, they want to make another rule. Today we're going to ban bump stock. Tomorrow we're going to ban Glock switch. But at the end of the day, it's an infringement on all of us. I like to see suppressor being manufactured in Arizona, and we don't have to pay a tax stamp on it. There are a lot of things that we can do if you get the right guy into that position.
I think that's important. Look, the ATF I've said many times is a predatory agency, and I think they should be gone. But I was talking with somebody who is very knowledgeable on the subject, on Second Amendment, and they're involved with one of the other big organizations. I'm not going to say exactly who it is because I don't know if he wants me to or not. But he brought up the point. He said, if you just keep the ATF in place and water them down and muzzle them, it might be better than getting rid of them. Because if you get rid of them, it'll be picked up by, like, say, the FBI. So now you have a division of the FBI, which is now basically what the ATF was, but now it's better funded. A lot of folks don't really care about the ATF. They're kind of maybe they'd be described as the redheaded stepchild of federal law enforcement. But the FBI is not the redhead. They're well funded, and if they just set up a department, a division of FBI to do exactly what ATF is doing, that might actually be worse. But that maybe a solution is to take ATF and just muzzle them and say, hey, you guys get to pass out, the equivalent of parking tickets. But other than that, that's all you get to do. And I thought that was an interesting perspective.
You know what, though? Once you strip out all the rules, especially with the Supreme Court ruling on the Chevron difference, you're not going to be able to make another rule.
Which is important. And that
which
is the real solution. Yeah. The real
um,
solution is getting rid of the rules and the regulations. You're absolutely right.
So you need somebody that goes in there with a little bit of backbone. I'm not saying Black doesn't have it. You need somebody to go in there with a backbone who has experience on the legislative side,
Yeah.
who has the ability to stand up there and said, "Hey, let's reason this out. You're wrong. I'm right. I'm gonna kill your bill. I'm gonna get my bill passed, and hopefully I'll have a governor, Republican governor one day, who can help me reclaim all the losses that we had with the Second Amendment." And that's what I think the
Well,
person.
how do we get your name in the running for head of the ATF? I
Hey,
gotta tell you.
I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot of dreams, right? I would love to run the NRA. I would love to run a lot of organization. I think before I go down 6 feet under, I would love to be working within just the Second Amendment space. And yeah, being the director of ATF, man, I'd be jumping all over the place on that one. My chances are going from 0 to 0. And I would love to be that guy. I'd love to be on the list just so I could tell my kids I was on the list.
There you go. Well, Quang, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. I think it's extremely interesting. I appreciate the information you gave us, particularly on Blake, somebody we really know very little about. There's some folks that I haven't heard any necessarily anything bad about him. I've just heard that people don't know enough about him, and then I've heard people that say, yeah, he'd probably be a pretty good person in the environment. So I hope he does a good job. I have a lot of faith in President Trump. So I hope that whoever whoever gets the job does it well and is directed by someone who philosophically agrees with us. So anyway, Quang, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. Take care.
Quan.
What do you think about that?
He's I like the way his mind thinks. I like
Yeah.
the way that he has he has a gift for really thinking, kind of looking, not being biased, not letting emotion get into it. And I like his perspective.
He's a warrior. I got to tell you, I wish we had people on this side of the Colorado River who were as willing to speak up as loudly and as clearly as he does. I think he does an amazing job.
Well, he was talking about last time we had him on about the whole power and coming at and approaching topics with logic and not just browbeating and trying to pressure people.
Yeah.
He has a real gift for being able to do that. To kind of convince and give you facts without being offensive.
Yeah. Well, okay, cool. All right, let's move on. Let's do our shoot you straight segment. Is Sam on?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sam's on. Well, let's do that then. Let's talk to
Going through Sam withdrawals.
good old Sam, man. Let's bring him on. Let's see. Where are we at here?
I've got it queued up right here.
You got it queued up?
I do.
Who's the sponsor? Do we need to give somebody some love here?
It was a Seal One.
Seal One? All right, we talked about Seal One, but still, go to seal1.com. We're going to talk to Sam. We're going to do Stump My Nephew, everybody's favorite. You send in a question. If we read it on the air, we'll give you a hat or a shirt. If you get it right, we'll give you something special. Sam, my nephew, turns out is extremely good on gun trivia. So we ask him questions that you send in, and more often than not, he gets the right answer. Great guy. But again, check out Seal One. Go to seal1.com, buy some stuff. If you spend at least $25 and use the code MASSAD, Mossad, you could be entered to win a Mag 40 class with Mossad Ayub this March. So check it out. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good. Happy New Year, bud.
Happy New Year to you too.
Did you do anything cool for New Year's?
No.
Yeah, me either. I didn't either.
Neither did we.
Yeah, nobody did. Nobody does that anymore. Post-COVID, you don't leave your house. That's not cool anymore, right? Okay, so are you ready for the question?
Sure.
You got the question?
I do. I have it right here.
Fire it up.
Hey, Sam. All right. So your question comes from Bonnie, and she's from Encinitas. Her question is, if a BB gun is spring-driven, why is it called an air rifle?
Oh.
And or pistol.
Read that again for me, please.
If a BB gun is spring driven, why is it called an air rifle or air pistol?
And who wrote that in?
Bonnie from Encinitas.
From Encinitas. Thank you for writing in. If a BB gun is spring driven, why is it called an air rifle? Well, first of all, most BB guns are not spring driven. Airsoft guns, many of them are, but BB guns, at least the kind that I had as a teenager, are driven by a pneumatic piston, which is why you have to pump it up. Most common BB guns have a forend that's hinged at the front. You open that up and then you pump it between 3 and 10 times. And what that's doing is that's pumping up the pressure in a pneumatic piston. The trigger releases the air pressure from the piston and fires the BB. Hence air rifle. Rifle also refers to a class of firearms which are, well, not firearms, a class of projectile weapons, I should say, which are more specifically called gas guns, because they'll use a cartridge of CO2 or of pressurized nitrogen to launch a projectile at much higher velocities than your backyard can shooting BB gun would achieve. And many of the higher power, higher pressure air rifles in like 45 caliber, 50 caliber are even suitable for small game hunting.
You remember Alicia, you remember those little CO2, look like little tiny bottles of
Yes.
CO2 that you see?
Correct.
So Sam, your uncle and your grandfather had a ton of those little CO2 cartridges laying around the house in the 80s growing up, long before you were around. And
It means a little something different now if people got them laying around.
well, your grandfather used them for his buoyancy compensator because he was a scuba diver, and your uncle used them for air guns, for BB guns. So we had very different.
So imagine those little gas ampoules, but much larger for a hunting style air rifle. Now, based on the wording of the question, I think I may be missing something. I may be off base with my answer here.
No.
But I have to say, I really don't know a tremendous amount about air guns. So
no, you nailed it.
My answer in a nutshell is most BB guns are not spring driven. Therefore, air rifle is still a mostly valid term, even though not all of them use just air. They'll use some kind of pressurized gas other than air, but that's my answer.
Yeah, well,
We'll
you
see if
nailed
it's
it when
correct.
you talked about the relationship between the spring and the piston. I'm going to read here. In 1886, the Markham Air Rifle Company in Plymouth, Michigan, produced the first wooden construct spring piston air rifle designed as a youth training gun and used a BB-sized birdshot as the chosen ammunition. 2 years later, the neighboring Plymouth Air Rifle Company, which later renamed Daisy Manufacturing Company in 1895, that's how long ago this was, introduced the first full metal air gun that also fired BB shots. The Daisy BB gun, which became a very popular household name because of successful marketing. Around 1900, Daisy changed their BB size bore diameter to .175 or 4.4 millimeter. Began marketing precision-made lead shot, which was really more of we used to call those pellet guns. BBs were the round, shot, little tiny guys, little copper dealies, and then the 0.175s were we called those pellets. Anyway, you're right. So basically, the piston creates the air pressure, and it's the mechanism is the spring. So you totally nailed it. You got it.
Another interesting note about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What's up? Other interesting note.
Another interesting note about gas guns as a class of firearm is that, not firearm, projectile weapon, because they aren't firearms, they're gas guns. Anyway, another interesting note about gas guns is that NASA actually uses high-power gas guns in a scientific context to simulate the effect of high-speed impacts in space, either micrometeoroid impacts on spacecraft parts, or even a small-scale modeling of asteroid impacts to better understand planetary formation processes. And the reason they use light gas guns has to do with the speed of sound through various gases. In order to achieve the velocities they need, they would either, if they were using a chemically actuated launcher in the same vein as a firearm like you or I are used to, they would need a propellant with a much higher ignition velocity or detonation velocity than is possible using most commonly available chemical propellants or even high explosives. So instead, what they use is a chemically actuated primary, if you will, to then force a piston to compress a volume of hydrogen or helium, so-called light gases. And I'm not explaining this very well, but basically it's a pneumatic system. The primary is chemically actuated. That compresses the light gas, and because the speed of sound through the light gas is much higher than it is through air or through other media, the pressure in the light gas can also be released much more rapidly, allowing them to achieve much higher muzzle velocities with the pellets they use.
Well,
Now, I'm sure there are some...
Like NASA, I've done some light gas experimentation myself that definitely had a lot to do with the speed of sound. But, that's a whole other story. But anyway, interesting stuff. That's awesome. You got it right. You nailed it as always. Very, very cool. We're going to move on to the Shoot You Straight segment. This is brought to you by Straight Shooter. Go to straightshooter.ac. 619-922-3937. When's the last time you had air conditioner or heater replaced? We're right in the middle of the winter, and that's right about the time when heaters go down. So give these guys a call. Let them come out. Let them take a look, evaluate you. Let them shoot you straight. And thanks so much for being a sponsor. So no bull, just straight shooting on today's hottest gun and political topics. It's time for the Straight Shooter segment. Okay, so we've talked a couple of times, and it doesn't seem to die, this little tidbit, and it worries me. The idea that California is turning red. And I've talked about how I'm not as confident, I'm not as positive on the idea that California is turning red. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about it because I thought it'd just kind of be a casual mention, at post-election, and people would say, hey, cool, we did better than we expected, and blah, 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 and then it'd move on. But that's what's happening. There's this narrative that's being formed that California is on its way to turning red. And I'm hearing elected officials say that Democrats are going to lose their footing in Sacramento and all this stuff. And here's the thing. I don't want people to be fooled.
Those are people that are looking at a snapshot in time, not looking at the actual trajectory of history.
They are. And I think what it's doing is it's breeding, apathy or people are kind of going, all right, cool. If that's the trajectory, then I don't have to do anything. But let's talk a little bit more about it, and then we'll talk about why we need to know this. So is California turning red? Well, like we said last time, Trump flipped some counties. In fact, he flipped 10 counties red. And then, of course, the Republicans picked up 3 legislative seats. So that on the surface sounds great, and that sounds like, hey, all right, great. 10 counties are now red because of Trump. Well, let's talk about the counties. The counties are Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, Inyo, Fresno, Merced, Butte, Nevada, San Joaquin, and a county I can't even pronounce. Stanislaus.
Yeah, good job.
Ho, ho, ho.
Good job.
Those are the counties that have turned red. Let's talk about those counties. First off, let's start with the fact that Inyo County has 18,000 people. 18,000 people. Mm-hmm. So that's about a third of the size of the city of Santee.
Right.
It's a teeny tiny little county. Merced County has about 291,000, which is just slightly bigger than Chula Vista. Butte County has 211,000 people, which is about the size of Chula Vista, maybe twice the size of Carlsbad. Nevada County has 101,000 people. Nevada County, 101,000 people, that's about the population of Carlsbad. I think Carlsbad's about 110. Now let's look at some of the other counties they talked about. The three biggest counties on that list of 10. San Bernardino County turned red. What's wrong with that statement?
It was already red.
Didn't you already? I mean,
What it is it was blue
in one election.
in one election. It had been red prior.
So San Bernardino County turned red. San Bernardino County, by the way, geographically the biggest county in the United States. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
More land in San Bernardino County than any other county in the whole United States. It didn't turn red. In fact, I'd argue it's still on a trajectory to continue to turn even more blue. And a lot of that has to do with people moving out of LA and moving out of other cities and going into San Bernardino who, don't care about your gun rights, don't identify with the Republican Party. So 51.2% of the vote went to Trump in San Bernardino County. Now, if I asked you 4 or 5 years ago, what percentage of San Bernardino County would vote red? Would you say 51%? Or would you say, 70%? San Bernardino County is thought of as a red county. And here they're saying, hey, they flipped it red. No, it was always been a right of center county.
Right.
And then in 2020, it flipped blue. And now it barely went pro-Trump. San Bernardino County, just barely by 1.2%. Well, that's not true. Harris got 46%, so that's really about a 4 or 5% difference, but still only 51% of the county.
Right.
I wouldn't say that Trump flipped it red. Well, he did, but I wouldn't say that this isn't a positive trend.
A little bit less blue than it was the election
Right.
prior.
Orange County. Did Trump flip Orange County red? For as long as I've lived in California, Orange County has been considered, a right of center county, a Republican county, right? A very conservative county. So how many people, you have it in front of you, don't you?
I do.
Okay, 48.9% voted for Trump.
Correct.
Orange County didn't even get 1 and 2 people that voted for Trump.
Right.
It's just not accurate to say that Trump has now flipped Orange County red. I would say it's more accurate that, Biden flipped it blue,
Correct.
So 48.9% voted for Trump, 48.4% voted for Harris.
So half of a percentage point.
Half a percentage point. Fresno County is probably the best example. Fresno County's got 1 million people. So it's a real live county. 1 million people is a big population. 50% voted for Trump. 46.5 voted for Harris. And I really, truly believe that Fresno is, there's a lot of agriculture. I think people think that, and it's true to say that rural people vote, they tend to vote, for Republicans more than they vote for Democrats. But agricultural people tend to vote for Democrats, and a lot of it has to do with, the benefits that they receive. In fact, if you look at a state like Minnesota, you look at it as a blue state, but really it's this agricultural, arm of the Democrat Party. Then they decide to caucus with the Democrat Party. So Dems do usually get a huge Latino vote, since the 90s. Basically, it was, Prop 187?
Correct.
Back in the 90s?
189?
I think it was 187. 187? Pretty sure.
I'll be right back.
I might be wrong. But anyway, there was a proposition that had to do with immigration, and it really, truly tipped the Latino vote blue. Let's see. Usually, 3/4 of Latinos said government. They did a survey, okay, just recently, post-election. 3/4 of Latinos said that government made prices higher. So they actually blamed the government for inflation. 53% disapproved of the government's work on the economy and jobs. That's a big deal. but they still voted majority for Democrats. And I want to show you where I'm going somewhere with this, but I want to lay the groundwork even more. So Adam Schiff is the Democrat who won the for state senate. He won by 19%, which is a huge gap. Even considering the fact that Steve Garvey was the Republican. Now, Steve Garvey has a lot of name ID.
Do you think that hurt him though, or
No.
you don't think so?
No. I think that if Steve Garvey, I think that if you put up somebody, in fact, I've seen it. I've seen example after example. If you put up somebody who has great ideas against somebody that has enormous name ID,
Name's going to win?
name's going to win.
Really?
I mean,
I honestly thought that this might hurt him a bit because the name familiarity. I thought that he might lose some credibility because think of what's a baseball guy going to know about politics?
Oh, I think I think there's a small percentage of thinkers who would absolutely, that's their line of thinking.
Right.
But there's a ton of people
that
who
are
just
not
go,
that way.
yeah, Steve Garvey. Gosh, I'm voting for Steve Garvey.
There you go.
Kind of like, I mean, that's how Schwarzenegger got to be governor.
You're right.
One of the best examples
Great
I've seen of this
Yeah.
is Leo Hamill. Everybody knows Leo Hamill because he runs commercials about his jewelry store, and he's a fantastic guy. We've interviewed him. He's on the board of San Diego County Gun Owners. Great guy.
Right.
He wanted to run for assembly in East County a few years ago, put his name on the ballot, and then decided not to run. And it was too late for him to get off the ballot. So he did absolutely no fundraising. He did absolutely no campaigning. And he still got like 25% of the vote, based entirely on the fact that he runs commercials about his jewelry shop.
And people know his name.
But people know his name. And so name ID, enormously important. I think that this is absolutely evidence that no, California is not turning red, at least not to the degree that people are making this out. Adam Schiff won by 19%, which is huge, but despite the fact that Steve Garvey had name ID, I think that if it was anybody else, it would have been a much higher gap. Trump picked up 75,000 votes. Did you know that?
No.
So he got 75,000 votes more in 2024 than he got in 2020. But the key to this is Kamala got 1.8 million fewer votes than Biden got in 2020. So she actually, because she was on the ticket, she lost 1.8 million. Now you think to yourself, well, okay, that means 1.8 million people voted for Republicans. Well, no, they didn't. He only picked up 75,000 votes. So where do these votes go? Well, there was a 9% drop in voter turnout in California.
That's huge.
It's enormous.
That's huge.
And there's one thing about elections that people don't take into account often enough, is that if 100% of voters voted 100% of the time, then there would really only be one thing. It'd be like, hey, how much do you like their policies, right? Mm-hmm. But there are so many other factors, like people not even bothering to show up, is another enormous factor. That's why get out the vote efforts are so important. So a 9% drop in voter turnout. Now, here's something, and this is where I'm going with this. 8 out of 9 Republican-backed propositions won. 8 out of 9 won. Okay, which sounds like great news, right? For if you're a Republican, you want California to be more red. And the 9th, by the way, had to do with gay marriage. I didn't really fully understand that, but on that 9th one, they were reaffirming their support of gay marriage, which there was no need to do that. I think what they were trying to do was get people to show up.
Ah.
You know what I mean? You put something on there that people care about.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 out of 9 Republican-backed props won. Well, that's great, Mike, right? See, you're wrong, Mike. California is turning red. You're completely wrong. Well, let's talk about the actual mechanics. Let's pull the curtain back and talk about.
Speaking of wrong, really quickly, I have to admit I was wrong. It was Prop 187. You were correct.
Oh, well.
1 for 1.
Miss Revel in my mistakes earlier in the show. Okay, so Prop 36 got 70%. It won with 70% of the vote.
That's huge.
Prop 36, titled Allows Felony Charges and Increases Sentences for Certain Drug and Theft Crimes, right? So basically what happened was, about 10 years ago, Democrats were a supermajority or a major majority at least, and they said, hey, you know what? We're going to go really, really light on crime. And that didn't work. So here's the problem. The propositions, we're one of the few states that actually has voter initiated propositions. I don't know if you knew that. Not all states can you put a proposition. There are some states that there's no proposition. The only way to get a law passed is through the legislature.
Right.
California has this voter proposition or voter initiated proposition. So what it does is it eliminates consequences to elected officials. So all these elected officials who voted for, the horrible policies that Prop 36 undid, they had no consequences. So 70% of people voted for Prop 36, which got rid of the light on crime policies. So how many of the 70% who voted for Prop 36 also voted for the candidates that caused the problem that made Prop 36 necessary? So there are a number of people who walked into a polling site or filled out their ballot, and they voted for Prop 36, and they also voted for a candidate who caused the problems of Prop 36 solved. So why is that important? What am I trying to say? Well,
They're not doing their homework.
They're not doing their homework, but the problem is there are no consequences. So if if the Democrats put up these horrible sets of laws and it doesn't work, then the consequences are, well, the Republicans are going to run a proposition and undo that, and then they don't face any consequences. It isn't connected. They don't think to themselves, well, hey, this elected official caused problems, so therefore I'm going to punish them by replacing them. The proposition process in California shouldn't be. It's not helping. It's helping California stay in a Democrat supermajority. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to explain?
Yep.
I got to tell you, if I could wave a magic wand and I could make 3 real changes in California, 3 real changes, that would actually help. I would say, first off, double or even triple the number of the assembly. Right now, there are 80 people in the assembly who represent 35 million people in California, whatever it is, 35 million people. Triple that so you get more representation. And then the second thing I would do is I would say rather than 40 senators who are in who have a district that's redrawn by population every 10 years, there should be 1 senator per county, and that senator should be appointed by the Board of Supervisors, not voted for. Not voted for. And that senator's job should be to look out for the interest of that county, which is, by the way, how the U.S. Constitution was originally written. The U.S. Constitution originally, the states would appoint their 2 senators. You didn't vote for the senator. That changed early 1900s. So double or triple the size of the assembly, have 1 senator per county who's appointed by the county. And then the third thing is get rid of this proposition. Get rid of the voter-initiated proposition program. You hear a lot of people say, oh, we're not a democracy. We're a representative republic. Those silly Democrats, they keep calling us a democracy. The proposition, voter-initiated propositions in California is pretty much the exact definition of democracy. It's the problem with democracy. And the issue is what's happened is Republicans have solved some of the minor problems with these propositions, because they know they can win because their issues are popular. So they run a proposition and they have a temporary win and everything's great, but it's not solving the actual root of the problem. Imagine if 70% of people said, hey, I am sick and tired of all this crime. Let's punish the people that put this in place. And they voted for the right candidates rather than just Proposition 36. So these propositions get rid of the symptoms, but they don't actually, kill the virus. They don't solve the problem. And I got to tell you, it would be a very different California if we had 3 times as many assembly members, 1 senator per county appointed by the County Board of Supervisors, and we ended the ridiculous proposition thing. I think in the short term, it'd probably be a little bit of pain, but in the long term, that's exactly what a representative republic should be. This idea that democracy, and I think that people confuse the idea that democracy is just voting for your representatives. Well, what they're talking about with democracy is that you vote on everything. You vote on policies. 50% plus one vote gets to do whatever they want. Whereas a representative republic, you vote for the people who represent you, and the role of the government is to protect your rights.
Correct.
And liberty and freedom. Now, I think it's a long shot, Mike. It's never going to happen. Certainly isn't going to happen in this decade, right? So what's the right now solution? Well, the right now solution is get involved. Going back to the idea that California is turning red, I think it's more accurate to say the wind is at our back. And that if we sit back and go, hey, this trajectory is great, California's turning red, can't wait for the next election, see what happens. No. Use this wind to our back and leverage it. Get involved. Right now is the time to get involved. Imagine if, and nobody really gets involved. There are very, very few people. There's a slightly better chance that the folks that are listening to this radio show are involved, because you guys are a part of an activist organization, and you're part of you're listening to a show that promotes activism. Imagine if we could just get 1 in 10 gun owners involved, or 1 in 10 Republicans involved. 1 in 10. There's nowhere near 1 in 10 involved in California. So don't sit back and just think, we're winning. Everybody's starting to agree with me. It's a good time. No, what you have to look at is, wow, the trajectory is going in a positive way. And if we harness that, if we work towards, a better tomorrow right now, then we might actually have one. But if we just wait and see, and we just kind of listen to the pundits and the talking heads and some elected official who wants to make his constituents feel good, hey, California's turning red. Absolutely not. It's our responsibility. We have to act. You have to act now. And the best way to do that is get involved in our organization, get involved in some organization, but get involved, with your dime and your time. And so I really wanted to bring that up. I wanted to make sure that people understood that it's not that simple, that California isn't, this amazing, pink county that's about to turn, or pink state that's about to turn even more red until it's this deep, dark red county. It's just not going to happen. But we can make things a whole lot better, and it certainly won't happen if you don't get involved. And that's the message today. Get involved. Get involved. We can't just solve every problem hoping that a proposition will bail us out. Anyway, so that's it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Alicia? You got any thoughts on that?
I think it's a powerful message. It just really hits home. Like you said, I think a lot of people will tend to want to kind of sit back, get complacent. Okay, cool. We've done a good job. Let's take a break and sit back. No, now is the time to not. And that's powerful, and that's important.
Or even worse, other people have done a good job.
That's true.
I didn't do anything.
So
I'm just going to let those other people do more, and I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. And,
right.
That's even more dangerous. Yeah. So anyway, all right, that's the show. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Matt on the board, and Rich and Alicia. Thank you, Sam the Gun Man. Thank you all for listening. Check out gunownersradio.com if you haven't already signed up, and promote us. Tell your friends and family about us. Share our clips, and thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.